In the first 74 days of this year, the Gun Violence Archive says there was 113 mass shootings. Now, to try to help and slow the violence, President Joe Biden issued an executive order this week. Now, Republicans, including North Carolina's Thom Tillis, are proposing a counterplan. Let's dig into it, starting with the president's executive order. Biden made the announcement in Monterey Park, California, the same spot where in January, a gunman stormed a dance hall there, shooting 20 people, killing 11 of them. Tom Waite shares the president's announcements.
President Biden greeted by an enthusiastic crowd in Monterey Park, but the reason for the visit and the tone of the speech was solemn. The president remembering the 11 people murdered in a horrific mass shooting at a dance hall in January, not far from where Mr. Biden gave his speech.
Ban assault weapons, ban them again, do it now, enough, do something.
The president made the trip to Monterey Park to announce a new executive order intended to reduce gun violence.
First, this executive order helps keep firearms out of dangerous hands, as I continue to call on Congress to require background checks for all firearm sales.
The order also increases the use of red flag laws. It addresses the loss or theft of firearms during shipping, asks the Federal Trade Commission to analyze gun marketing, and increases federal support for gun violence survivors.
We need to provide more mental health support and grief and trauma, and more financial assistance when a family loses the sole breadwinner, or when a small business shuts down due to a lengthy shooting investigation.
Seated in the front row for the president's speech, hero Brandon Tsai, who wrestled the gun from the killer at a second studio before the shooter could hurt anyone else. This executive order comes after Congress passed bipartisan gun control legislation last year. And while the order is welcomed, the real power is with Congress to enact tougher restrictions. Professor of Political Science, Jack Pitney.
The substance is what Congress did last year, and that's the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. That was the first substantial gun control legislation to pass in about 30 years. An executive order can only implement what is already in black letter law. The president can't issue a decree. So gun control advocates may be frustrated, but President Biden is operating within the limitations of the law.
Okay, let's make this really clear. Biden's action does not change government policy. The executive order directs federal agencies to ensure compliance with existing laws and procedures. So it only calls on those agencies to follow the bipartisan gun control law enacted last summer. President Biden has said he would like to expand gun control even more, but with the current Republican control of the House of Representatives, it seems unlikely that more legislation will pass. And we saw opposition to strengthening gun control right after Biden announced his executive order. North Carolina Senator Thom Tillis said the president was out of line with an executive order that's in violation of the Second Amendment. Republican senators introduced the Respect for the Second Amendment Act yesterday.
Not only did we codify the Bruen-Heller decision, we give you the right under this statute to sue those who are coming after your right to responsibly own a gun, to give you a cause of action so you can fight back.
Here in North Carolina, Democratic lawmakers have introduced 4 bills hoping they can one day reduce the number of gun deaths in our state. House Bill 281 would allow law enforcement to temporarily restrict a person's access to guns if they pose a danger to themselves or others. That's a red flag bill law. House Bill 284 would allow law enforcement agencies to destroy unclaimed firearms. House Bill 283 would require a permit for rifle purchases, and Senate Bill 210 would require a permit to purchase any assault weapon. Representative Pricey Harrison from Guilford County is a sponsor of several of these bills. Now, this comes as the Republican-controlled North Carolina House and Senate recently passed Senate Bill 41, sending the bill to, quote, guarantee Second Amendment freedoms and protections right to Governor Cooper's desk. This bill's got 3 sections to it. The first would allow guns in places of worship if they're connected to schools. But the place of worship would have to be on private property and only outside of school hours. It would also let a non-sworn law enforcement employee carry a concealed gun into the law enforcement agency. That's only if they get written permission to carry the weapon from the head of the law enforcement agency. The second section would repeal the state's pistol permit system, which has been used for a century now. Right now, you either need a concealed carry or pistol permit purchase to get a handgun. Some lawmakers say it's redundant because federal background checks are required. But opponents of the bill believe it would allow more people who shouldn't have guns to slip through the cracks. That last section would require the State Department of Public Safety to work with the Department of Health and Human Services and Wildlife Resources to launch a 2-year safe gun storage initiative. Again, the bill is now up to Governor Roy Cooper.
I think that this legislation that completely eliminates the permit for a pistol, which would make it easier for people who commit domestic violence to be able to buy guns, I think that's going backward. I think we need to go forward to try to reduce gun violence while respecting the Second Amendment.
Governor Cooper vetoed similar legislation in the last 2 years. If he vetoes it again, though, there is still a chance the veto could be overridden. Here's how that would work. If Republicans had the supermajority, they would automatically have enough votes to override Governor Roy Cooper's veto. That halfway happened in the last election. They got the supermajority in the Senate, but not in the House, falling just 1 seat short. Still, history shows there are ways for Republicans to override the governor's veto without the supermajority. Let's go back in time to 2019.
You shall not do this to democracy in North Carolina, Mr. Speaker. How dare you do this, Mr. Speaker?
You might remember this video of a Democrat at the State House that went viral across the nation. She was responding to Republicans overriding Governor Roy Cooper's veto of the state budget 55-15 with 38 Democrats not in the room at the time. So today's history lesson, with an even bigger Republican majority than in 2019, nowadays, even if one Democrat is absent from a session, it could open the doors to Republicans being able to override the governor's veto. We'll be right back.